Have you ever heard of somebody who abducts little boys?
Room below's got some horrible smells.
We don't want to go in there. What are you doing?
Complimentary room service. Here is that.
Hello, and welcome back, hopefully, to another episode of Dollar Store Drive-In. I'm your host, Laura.
I'm Joel.
And we're the Newly Dads. And if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. If this is not, welcome back, like I said in the beginning. We are a half-hour chat show where we talk about a movie that we've watched and then discuss it with you fine folks. And we have some criteria for that show. I'm very tired today. And that is that the movie needs to be under $5. It needs to be a horror, thriller, or sci-fi genre movie. And it needs to be a movie that neither of us have ever watched. So if you're listening to this, this is also a podcast. So we highly recommend that you check us out through our many different channels that you can watch us. And you can find that information at, I almost said contact with the Newly Dads, thenewlydads.com for all of your Newly Dads stuff. So on there, you'll be able to find all of the different locations. You can find events that we've gone to or we're planning on going to. You'll find different blog posts that we write. Mr. Newly Dad here does a lot of blog posts for movies that he's watched and reviewed. We also do small business reviews occasionally and artists and things like that. They can be local or they can be anywhere, actually. So if you do want to have us review you, you can contact us at contact@thenewlydads.com. So this week we watched a movie called Mortuary. Yeah. And this movie, it has a little bit of a synopsis, I believe, on here.
Yeah, just a small one.
Just a little one. This is on a 2-disc set. The other movies, are actually 3, that are on here are Salvage and Memory. We ended up watching Mortuary because that's what popped up for us on this episode. And so I'm going to read the synopsis and then we'll keep on keeping on. Does that sound good?
Let's do it.
All right. When the Doyle family moves to a small town in California to start a new life, it entails running the long-abandoned Fowler Funeral Home and Cemetery. The locals fear the place, and there are whispers around the town that the grounds are haunted. All too soon, the Doyles discover the gossip, and worse is true. Something sinister lurks beneath the Fowler estate, something that raises the dead and feeds upon death itself. Yeah, told you it was
Pretty
not
accurate.
long. Yeah, not a long synopsis there.
Long enough.
Yeah, long enough. Interesting. Interesting.
Is it though? We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
We'll find out.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think we should show the trailer so that way they can get an idea of what the movie is?
I'd say that sounds like a good plan.
I think that sounds like a good plan to me too. So, this week, again, this is why you should watch it because Mr. Newly Dad likes to pop up like funny things on the TV screen. Sometimes you see our dogs and whatnot because we do record this out of our house. But the trailer is a hearse.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just trying to make it so it like fit.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that hearse is just coming from that side. All right. So we're going to pause it and we will be right back after you're done watching the trailer.
mortuary passed through Zeb's family until 1962. Emmeline and Franklin Fowler own it, and they're the last ones in the Fowler line, except for...
Bobby. Bingo.
But he's horribly deformed. And when Bobby's 8, poof, he disappears. Ever since then, people have said that Bobby's still alive. They locked him in a tomb, but he survived. He only comes out at night.
Oh, this is freaky. It's like someone lives here.
You think so?
Oh, hey there.
Well, you know what?
Scared.
I think we found that, Oh my
What
god.
happened to you guys? He lives here. Bobby Fowler lives here.
Bobby Fowler,
Great. The loser patrol shows up to rescue me.
Hi. Did you hear that? Where do you want the body?
You'll have to come home sometime.
And we're back. And we've got a dog that has a Christmas sweater on, even though it's not Christmas time. It's actually March.
It is smart. He's
But
cold
he's
though.
cold, so this is how we roll.
Yeah. It
welcome,
fits him.
welcome Bailey to the show.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Lay down, buddy. Nope. I can't. Nope. There you go. All right. High five. All right. Now lay down. Okay. So whenever we watch a movie, I take notes. That way gives us a little bit of a guideline as far as what to talk about during the course of the episode. Mrs. Newlywed also this year has determined that she is going to take notes every episode. So far, she has done that stellarly. And then at the end of the year, Mrs. Newlywed will take all of my notes, put them together in the little flip book that you can see on our aforementioned website. 2023 and 2024 are available now. So if you go over to the website, you can check those out, see what I draw, see what I write while we're watching the movies, get a little insight into the background of the show. And yeah, so I'm sorry if he's rubbing up against the mic. At this point, I will show Mrs. Newlywed what I've got here. She'll describe what's on there, and then we'll...
Yeah, it looks like you've got a little chainsaw that says "rrrr," and then a little dude with like a lightning bolt on his forehead.
That's it.
And that's it. Yeah.
I don't know what the little dude's about. I like the way he came out. He's kind of weird, but...
I drew some things. So I drew this is the graveyard baby.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Creepy blood drain.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that, too.
I drew Penny Can.
We'll get to that also.
And I don't know why a tongue. A little weird tongue thing because you kept sticking your
because I
tongue
was
out.
making a weird face at you and you thought it was funny.
I drew a zombie headbanging death dance.
Oh.
And I drew, this is like that hole in the...
Oh, like the well in the basement.
the well in the basement.
The thing that should not be, as it were.
Yep.
So, now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. So
Yes.
the Mortuary is from 2005, currently sitting at 4.2 out of 10 on the Internet Movie Database. Hi.
Dr. Bean.
This one is directed by Toby Hooper, who you may recognize that name as being the man behind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Parts 1 and 2.
Oh, is that why there's the chainsaw?
Yep.
Yep.
Poltergeist, which he did in a project with Steven Spielberg. Salem's Lot, the TV movie, not the remake that just was released not that like a year ago. Yep. With a very Nosferatu type vampire. Life Force, which is kind of an exploitation classic about, I want to say it's also a vampiric theme, but it's more of like a weird space energy nudity thing going on. And The Funhouse, which is a movie that I feel like on paper I should like, but the main character in it, the main protagonist, or antagonist, I should say. I don't care for the makeup design for. It's just odd. So this was written by Jace Anderson and Adam Girash. Girash, Gierasch. If it was German, I'd say Girash.
Yeah.
And they co-wrote Crocodile 1 and 2 and The Toolbox Murders from 2005, which has the distinction of being the only film other than Rob Zombie films that Sherry Moon Zombie starred in. And the reason she starred in that film, because Tobe Hooper directed it, and Rob Zombie was like, hey, you want to be in a Tobe Hooper movie? And she said, sure. She has a very small role, but I've seen both the original and the remake, and the remake is not great, unfortunately. And finally, Night of the Demons from 2009. That was the remake of the original 80s classic. This stars Dan Bird, who was one of the main characters in the show Cougar Town, which is where the penny can comes from, that Laura drew. If you've never seen the show,
It's funny.
It's funny. You should check it out. The Hills Have Eyes, 2006. He was the son of Ted Levine's character, who was the family that gets stranded and gets attacked by the hill people. Not Lothar, but the mutated hill people. He was in 28 Days, not 28 Days Later or 28 Weeks Later, but 28 Days, the alcoholism movie with Sandra Bullock.
Oh, yeah.
And Easy A, the Emma Stone movie that kind of flew under the radar, but a lot of people really enjoyed and kind of helped catapult her to where she is today.
Yep.
This also stars Denise Crosby, who is my second favorite character from Star Trek The Next Generation. She was a Tasha Yar on that show. Unfortunately, she met an untimely end in that show as well. Spoiler alert. She was in Pet Sematary. She was in Dolly Dearest, which is on the shelf and is something that we watched 2 years ago on my birthday. I think it was 2 years. Maybe it was last year. And she had a small role in Jackie Brown. Yeah, the Quentin Tarantino movie. And finally, the last person I was going to mention is Courtney Peldon, who you may recognize the name, you may not recognize the face, who was in The Ice Storm, which is an indie movie that came out in the early 2000s, maybe. I don't remember exactly, but Sigourney Weaver was in that. Tom and Huck, the kids' movie retelling with Jonathan Taylor Thomas. Little Giants, another kids' movie. And Out on a Limb, which was a comedy from, I want to say, the mid-'80s, maybe? Just remember the poster, I think, with Matthew Broderick, if I remember correctly. So at this point, Mrs. Newlywed turns to me and says,
what did you think?
And now we tell the truth behind the lies. So this movie, as she kind of said in the synopsis, there's a family that moves into an old funeral home that is a family-run funeral home that the person that was running it has passed away. And she is moving in because it's a free house, basically, as part of her inheritance that she gets to run with her two kids. Their father is no longer in the picture. He has passed away. And things start to happen. So the very first thing that we noticed that was kind of weird is that the little girl that's the daughter in the movie, something's wrong with her. I don't know what it is. She's very odd.
Yeah.
The first thing she says when she comes into the funeral home is,
she's like, oh, did you have Dad brought here? Because she's looking at a casket.
Yeah, she's like, is this where Daddy is? Or they took Daddy? And then you meet the, I thought he was a family member, but maybe not. The guy that's
He's like a real estate agent.
The real estate guy that just laughs
weird
constantly.
And kept wanting to hug her. And it was odd.
He was very touchy-feely, and he just kept, I wrote just a bunch of ha-ha-ha-has because he kept laughing.
Yeah, and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, the sewer backed up because it's been raining, so you'll have to get that fixed. And then, go into the funeral home, and then he's like, oh yeah, by the way, like, nothing has been fixed or nothing has been the kitchen was disgusting. Like, there was like E. coli water that was coming out of the tap. She's like, I thought you were going to fix this before I got here. He's like, well, sorry. Like, sorry about your luck. You bought it as is kind of thing. There's like embalming fluid and like all sorts of stuff. Like, he's talking about how, they weren't able to do XYZ because, it's a like health risk and stuff like that. Do you remember him saying that?
They were going to have a prison crew come in and clean it up, but they wouldn't allow them supposedly to come in and do that because of the chemicals involved. yet it's okay for her daughter to run around the place. with
And
the
yeah,
chemicals.
okay for them to buy it and live there. Like
Yeah.
it should have probably been condemned. It was falling apart.
Something was off.
Yeah.
And so as they're cleaning up, they notice that there is a very large amount of rock salt and an ice cream maker. So the mom assumes that it's because they like to make ice cream, which we find out later is not the case.
It's like so odd.
It's
Oh,
very
they must like making ice cream at a funeral home.
right. And it was down in the, if you've ever seen 6 Feet Under, it was in the prep area for the bodies where they take the bodies to work on them to get them ready for viewings.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would they have the ice cream maker and all the rock salt down where the bodies are being stored? It was strange.
It was
And
an
then
odd movie.
the guy, the real estate guy, apparently also is the head of like bringing in the bodies, because he's like, hey, I got some bodies for you. And he's like, there was an accident on the highway. And he's like, woo, we got a bunch of bodies for you. And
Yeah.
she's like, I've already got 2 on the table. I don't have any room. He's like, well, I'm getting you $400 a head instead of 200. So, you better take them. So the way they decide to store the bodies is they put them in the empty caskets that are up in the showing area, the viewing area. There's no refrigeration.
Nope.
They haven't been embalmed yet.
Nope.
They're literally fresh from the accident scene, and they're being stored in caskets on the main floor.
And the main character, the woman he was talking about, what's her name?
Denise Crosby.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's like, I felt a calling to come here and like move my kids across the United States to move to this destination, and has no idea how to be a funeral director or a person that is, deals with mortuary. She doesn't have any background in mortuary science. She's trying to embalm one of the people on the table, and she's like reading a textbook on top of the body while she's like trying to figure these things out. She's like, oops, I forgot to put the little caps in this thing. So there's embalming fluid flying all over the place and like blood flying out of the guy when she finally got it to start going. And like, it was just odd.
And it was 2005, so phones weren't exactly like they are now, where you could just look up a YouTube video and kind of
Right.
get a tutorial. She's literally using a textbook, which I have not one but 2 friends that are in the mortuary sciences, and one of them is on the more of the end of the greeting and that sort of thing, the day-to-day operations. The other one is actually a mortician and has gone to and is still completing their schooling. And it's not like an easy thing to get to be a mortician. Like there's a lot of schooling involved and a lot you have to do just with safe handling alone. I mean, that's a huge undertaking.
Dealing with human remains and
Right.
stuff.
And she's just like, whatever,
Willy-nilly.
I'll figure it out. Woo!
Yeah. And they brought someone, he meets, so that her son goes and like finds a job at like a local diner, and then he like makes friends with these 2 people, and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, do you want to come back to my house and see some bodies and stuff? And they're like, okay. So like, he takes them downstairs and he's like, here's a body. And she's like, that was my teacher. And like, she gets really upset about it. Like, duh.
She's like, I had a piano lesson tomorrow with him, and they show the body, and he looks like
He looks like
What
a
did you say?
leprechaun.
Yeah, he looks like the
I look
leprechaun.
like a zombie leprechaun.
the
Creepy
guy
dead guy is what I call them.
looked like he had been dead and not properly
He
stored
was
for about a
blue.
week.
He was like blue.
And like his face was really sunken and shriveled up, and he looked like he'd been like
Yeah.
dried out.
And
It
he
was,
had crazy hair, and he's like,
and I know they did that because eventually, spoiler alert, as they mentioned, the dead come back to life. Well, he comes back to life eventually, and then it makes sense because typically when zombies come back, they don't look like they did when they died most of the time.
yeah.
But why didn't they do that first and then go to that? I don't know. It was a weird decision that just felt weird. And then
There was a lot of weird decisions.
like the side story about this guy named Bobby F., who I forget his last name, but
Fowler.
Fowler.
It was the Fowler funeral home.
correct. Yeah, that's right. There's this rumor around that he's still around, that he lives in the mausoleum in the basement, and he comes out at night to forage for food, and like he does
Rob
bad
Graves
stuff and
whatever.
And it's like, okay, so you've got this weird black mold thing that's eating blood that's going inside of the dead bodies and the living ones, turning them into these zombified type creatures. But also there's this kind of
Cleft
Leatherface-esque
Yeah, he had a
Funhouse character.
yeah, like Leatherface or kind of like Hills Have Eyes kind of character.
Kind of. And if you've seen Funhouse, he looks kind of like the main bad guy in that too.
Mm.
He's got a because that guy had a cleft palate too.
Yeah.
Like a cleft lip.
So it's like
Hair lip.
multiple
I guess is what it's
antagonists in this, plus like even the people of the town are kind of jerks. Like there's like
Yeah.
a group of kids that are like I call them a-hole teens, like being mean to her son. And so it's just like, I don't know.
Defacing the cemetery.
Pickling.
And,
I feel like
yeah.
pickling. Like, do you want it to be a zombie movie? Do you want it to be like a crazy person in the graveyard coming after you kind
you
of
want it
thing?
to be a townies
Do
movie.
you want it to be a monster movie? Like it was just like too many things like all going on at the same time, and it was exhausting.
And the movie was under an hour and a half, so
And it felt
they're
really long.
shoving a lot into a small amount of time.
Yeah.
Which I joked that Bobby F was Axel F's cousin. Yeah, those who know, you get it. And they never really define. I mean, they kind of by the end of it give you an idea of what the black mold stuff is, sort of, and where it's coming from, but it's not really fleshed out enough that you're like, oh, that makes sense, or oh, that's dumb, or oh, that's whatever. It's like, oh, okay, well, that was a thing that happened. And I have to give Tobe Hooper credit for. I could tell it was a Tobe Hooper movie. Like if you wouldn't have told me that it was his direction, I would have probably picked up on it because there's certain shots that he does that were there. There were certain lighting techniques that he used that were there. There were certain things that definitely made it feel like a Tobe Hooper movie. They also got, I felt like the small town vibe down pretty well, where things are kind of loose and
The
everybody
sheriff
knows
was
everybody.
like,
Oh, he was weird too.
yeah, super weird.
What was
He's
it?
the one that said the graveyard babies.
Yeah.
He's like, you better watch out because teens like to come into this graveyard at night and make graveyard babies.
We don't need any more graveyard babies. Like, what is this? What is that about? And then like her best friend, who the main girl, who's kind of the love interest of Dan Bird's character, has this weird like barbed wire tattoo that is encompassing his neck, which a lot of people have them around their or their biceps. That's not uncommon, especially 80s to 90s. That was a thing. But he's got it around his neck, and it's a really weird choice. Like why was, and the kid doesn't really seem like the kind that would have that type of tattoo. Like
Right.
the character is not, it doesn't feel normal. Like it just was like a choice that they made for some weird reason. It felt like it was an 80s movie that was set in the 90s, but it was actually from the early 2000s. So there was some weird discrepancies there. Then they also, another Tobe Hooper thing that they had a dinner scene with people that were being forced to stay and in this uncomfortable dinner sequence with food that was not food.
Yeah.
And it was fun from that perspective. And then there was the whole chase scene underneath everything where they go down into the mausoleum where Bobby F lives, and there's all these tunnels that go around and come out in different parts of the house and the cemetery. Felt very much like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Like it's just like Tobe was like, hey, let's grab a little bit of this and a little bit of this. And let's just make this into a movie. And then you get to the end. There's zombie people everywhere that aren't really zombies.
And how do they kill them?
And they're trying to get away and figure out what to do. And then there's this random thing that happens where they spill salt on one of the characters, the zombies, and the zombie basically does like a vampire in the sunlight thing and just kind of turns into dust. So they're like, oh,
Rock salt.
yay, we've got lots of rock salt. That's convenient. So apparently the people that own the mortuary already knew there was an issue and chose not to divulge that. So keep that in mind if you're buying a house. So they start throwing rock salt on all the zombies, which the zombies go from like 30 zombies that are all coming down and trying to break into the house to within literally like 2 minutes time, they're all gone. And the only thing that they're really dealing with is trying to find the little girl who now has been
Because with Bobby
caught
took
by
her.
Bobby F.
And we were like, oh, maybe he's going to be a nice guy.
Like he's going to be the hero.
Yeah. But then he puts her in a cage and then she gives him Twizzlers and he's like eating Twizzlers and he's happy about it. And then he's got more Twizzlers.
He's got like a whole like bag of Twizzlers.
and then he's
essentially.
like trying to give her a Twizzler and she's like, no. And then he gets mad.
It was kind of like the
Weird.
Baby Ruth thing in Goonies, except
Yeah.
that it doesn't end happily.
Yeah.
But I think Bobby was just kind of never been socialized properly. So
Right.
his two modes were either you're my friend or I'm going to murder you.
Yeah.
There was no middle ground. So then it turns out that they didn't actually kill Denise Crosby, who's a zombie, by the way. Spoiler alert, we're getting into the end of the movie here. And so she comes back and is trying to, with the other ones that are still alive.
But she's not like a zombie. She's like talking like normal.
Because the black mold didn't reanimate her. It just she swallowed it, essentially, and it turned her into one of these creatures. So it reanimates the dead, or it animates the living into disciples of the thing that lives in the well under the house.
Spoiler alert, that's the main monster that's controlling all of the things.
Bobby and the family are down trying to fight off the remaining zombified characters who are trying to sacrifice them as a blood feast. They're trying to throw the little girl into the pit as a blood feast to satiate the creature. And Bobby's trying to save her because, Twizzlers. And the family's trying to save her from Bobby and from the blood monster, plus all the other. And so it's this big cacophony of like salt and monsters. And it's just crazy. And
something happened.
Oh, we can spoil it. I don't care.
I fell asleep twice.
She did fall asleep twice. So ultimately, Bobby sacrifices himself to save the little girl, but he doesn't really want to die. He'd rather they try and save him, but they don't. They just kind of like, oh no, sorry, Bobby. Yep. Which we'll get to that here in a minute. And then it's just like, okay, you're like, everything's done.
Yeah.
And then they leave and they come out of into the daylight.
The monster in the hole looks like a giant leech.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Sarlacc pit from Return of the Jedi, sort of, but on a much smaller scale. And it's got like tentacles and weirdness. I don't know.
It's like
it's got lots of like teeth. Just random teeth. So
very bad CGI, by the way.
2005 CGI. So
really bad.
They've killed all the zombie people. Bobby's gone. The well has been destroyed. Everything's happy. They go up to the daylight and they're like the little girl, the main guy, Dan Bird, and his girlfriend are the only people left. And they're like, yay, we did it. Hooray. And then the mom comes out of the house and is like, I don't know what she does, but she's like, all right, I got to sacrifice you. And then like they throw them back. The pit's still working. And they're like, basically they're back to where they were. Like nothing ever worked. Like nothing happened except all the zombies are gone except for her. So she's attempting to kill them, or does kill them, because she, I think, throws Dan Bird into the mulch and like he starts getting eaten alive or something. I don't remember.
The very end?
Yeah.
Well, the very, very end, like he falls down and like, they're like, oh, we're saved or whatever. And this is what I remember. Like he falls down and then all of a sudden it turns into like the black, like squiggly monster thing. And like he gets sucked into the ground and that's the end of the movie.
But the mom comes out of the house and like grabs the little girl or something. So essentially whatever they did didn't work.
It was dumb.
And that was the end. And then the credits roll and there were some good things about it, but I was literally I had a pretty decent rating up until that ending. And then when the ending happened, I dropped my score. Like it immediately dropped.
Yeah.
I changed my letterbox. Everything had to be changed because I thought it was done. I'm like, okay, I'm good with where I'm at. But
so what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts were justice for Bobby F. on Tombstone.
And mine was Mortuary is a movie I wanted to like, but instead, as the kids say, it was mid.
I'd say it's a little below mid.
Well, mid means bad.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah. And so what'd you rate it out of, let's do salt.
Oh,
yeah.
Because everybody got assaulted.
Like rock salt, if you can do one of those like big bags that you put on like the driveway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I ended up at the end of the day at a 1.5 out of 5. Part of that
what
is
was it
for
before that?
A 2.
Oh.
Part of it was for Bobby or for Dan Bird and Denise Crosby, and part of it was for Toby Hooper. But
yeah.
They just, I don't know. There was a lot of good things in it, but it just was a mess the way that it was constructed.
I gave it a 0 out of 5.
Hey, at least you weren't negative.
No.
So that's a positive.
Yeah. It automatically loses a point for me, like falling asleep. But we did watch it at, 9:15 at night.
Yeah, we ended up starting a little late due to some unforeseen circumstances.
Yes. All right. Well, if they don't want to watch this movie, what should they watch?
This was easy. This movie felt like a spiritual
successor?
Yeah, not really. Like a cousin, like a third cousin of 1990s Tom Savini directed Night of the Living Dead. So the remake of Night of the Living Dead, Tom Savini did with George's blessing, and it stars Patricia Tallman and Tony Todd and Bill Moseley. It's fantastic. Like if you ever want to have a remake and you want to see it done right, that is an example of a remake that is done well. It's getting some love now. It was kind of a little bit disparaged initially, but now it's starting to come back, and I've loved it ever since I first saw it. I was impressed, and it felt like this movie, but in a good way. So,
Oh, good. All right. So, what are we watching next week? I'm blowing this up, by the way. Oh no, I can't blow it up. We've got
nope, we
another
got one
movie
more.
on
I was
there.
like, if you blow it up, we won't be able to finish.
Not blowing it up.
Next week, we are getting back to this. Remember, we couldn't watch the this one,
Yeah. Which one? The Curse of the Wolf.
Wolfie from
Is that what we're
2008.
watching?
Yep, because we found the other disc. We actually had it the whole time, even though we were like, it only was one disc, and it said it was two. Well, we found the other disc, and so now we have all of them, and we actually have 2 copies of Chupacabra versus the Alamo now. How's that
There's
happen?
9 movies. All right.
But yeah, we're watching Curse of the Wolf.
Which is a very short synopsis because
Yep.
it's a 9 movie on two discs here.
Set.
Curse of the Wolf. Dakota, a young werewolf, has finally learned to control her nighttime transformations and escapes to the city to start a new life. But her pack won't let her go without a final vicious battle.
Oh no.
That sounds interesting.
I already have my notes from when I wrote them out like 3 months ago because we were supposed to do it then and then we didn't. But I kept my notes just in case. It's not streaming anywhere. This one is hard to find. And
Yeah.
So
All
we
right.
shall see.
Yeah. Well, as always, thank you very much for watching. Sorry about the rough start on this show.
Yeah.
It's been a long day. But yeah, we appreciate you tuning in every week. And if this is your first time, we hope you come back. And until next week,
Keep it cheap and creepy.
bye.
Doesn't mean you should go chasing the dead.
It may be your robot, but it's my house.
I want to get a close look at these sharks.
Sounds dangerous.
Well, I'll be careful.
You and your wife must have been very close, sir.
We hated each other.
Then why are you so upset?
Because that's no her.